A seventh grade science teacher at Bryan Middle School is celebrating a major recognition. She's among 9 teachers chosen to participate in the prestigious National STEM Scholar Program.
Erin Hartley tells us how the teacher is working to get her students more excited about math and science.
Seventh grade science teacher Sarah Nelson Weiss wants her students to learn by doing.
So I've been kind of consistently throughout my career looking at those opportunities, and then when the National STEM Scholar Program came on my radar, it was something I knew I really wanted to pursue.
As part of her application to the program, she designed her own science experiment.
So my project essentially is having students investigate native plants and grasses compared to your common turf and lawn grasses. I hope to have a field experience where we go out to a nature preserve nearby and collect some data with some species richness to kind of count the species in an area.
That design booked her ticket to Western Kentucky University to take part in the National STEM Scholar Program.
So the week-long training had a lot of professional learning opportunities that really opened my eyes to some different aspects of science that I wasn't as familiar with, and kind of some of the new up-and-coming research in especially space science and kind of the brain science of the teenage brain. So those pieces were really influential as well.
And while she's honored for the recognition, she's using this opportunity to get her students engaged in STEM inside and outside the classroom.
Middle school, I think, is a really important age for students as far as finding out what subjects they really enjoy and don't enjoy. And that's one of the reasons why this program specifically looks at middle school science teachers. When students are out there collecting data and analyzing that data, they have ownership of their learning, which I think is so important for them developing confidence in the subject and developing a liking or loving of the subject.
On your side, Erin Hartley, 6 News.
And Sarah will be using her own project as part of her curriculum for the students in the fall. She'll also attend the National Science Teacher Association Conference in April next year.